Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and start her nose. And I do need to make sure that I'm happy with the way that it's drawn, right? And hopefully I have gone ahead and double checked to make sure that everything is correct. And I've looked for problems and I have fixed them. I also want to make sure that I'm erasing any grid lines that are going to end up being darker than the area that I'm working in. Okay. The thing about the nose I think that makes it difficult is that you only have a couple actual lines. We have a clean line here at the edge of the nostril where it becomes like an interior space. And we have a clean line out here, again, at the edge of the nostril. The rest of the nose is all shading. And the shading is gonna make your nose feel skinny, or your nose feel wide, or your nose feel pointy, because that's really what the bulk of the nose is about, is using value in order to create the form. Like the eye, I'm gonna go ahead and start with my dark values first, so I can kind of put things in place. And so I'm just gonna kind of go along this edge here. It's a clean edge from overlapping, and so I'm literally gonna use the tip of my pencil to draw a clean edge. Because there is no outline on her nose, I'm just gonna pull the value off of that edge. And I can see that it's darker here through the center, and that it lightens a little bit on the edges. We know that the dark values recede back spatially and that light values come forward. And the goal with her nose is to make this part of her nose, the tip of her nose, feel like it's, you know, an inch in front of this part of her nose, that interior space. Okay, I'm gonna go to the other side and do that same thing. I'm gonna line this line using the tip of my pencil. And then I'm gonna pull the value off of that. And even when I'm working with these darks, I'm still using my good smooth shading skills. So I'm still using compressed ovals, I'm still layering. I can use a little bit more pressure in an area that I want to become dark than in an area that I want to become light. But the rules for how to apply the graphite are pretty constant. I'm gonna go down here below. The tip of her nose is gonna look a lot like the base of our sphere. I'm gonna see kind of that reflective light, the little dark above it. And the line here is kind of soft in that it blends out both below and above. There's lots of little soft edged changes here. And I'm just kind of shading those in. Along the side of her nose, there's a clean line and a little cast shadow here. And I'm just gonna pull this line. We'll go to the other side. And the same thing, I have a clean edge, and then there's a little cast shadow here. And so I know that cast shadows have a soft edge to them. I can see there's this line here that defines the nose from the cheek. There's a tiny bit of reflective light, or a little light that bounces off of her cheek onto the side of her nose. And then there's a dark that runs right here. just inside the edge of her nostril. So again, a lot similar to what we've already worked with in terms of our sphere. What I'm doing could be described as blocking, right? I'm using value to start to establish the primary values and where the shapes are, so that I can go back in and look more closely at smaller value changes, which we might describe as details. That's a little darker than I wanted. Although I would say her nose has a full range of value, if I look at the highlight on the tip of her nose, it's a medium light. You know, check your nose, but it's not going to be paper white. There's little values here that seem to connect the inside of her nostril towards the outside. When you see clean lines, you have to ask yourself, what side of the line does the value pull off of? In the case of the nose, it may toggle back and forth on either side of what we see or read as a single line. If I'm curious about the range of value in two areas on her nose, I just use my little paper punches so that I can isolate out the value and make a more accurate comparison. So I might see reflective light in 3 different places when I'm shading on her nose. I might see it at the tip of the nose, light reflected off of the kind of peak of her lips. I might see it on each of the nostrils as light could reflect off of the fullness of her cheeks. In the same way that I could see shape better drawing upside down or sideways, the same is true here with shading. So if you're struggling to see the shapes of the shadows or the shapes of the value changes, just rotate your drawing and rotate your paper. The only thing that changes when you flip it is your relationship to it.